In 1949, at the newly integrated swimming pool at the Fairground Park in St. Louis, it became the center of chaos. A race riot would break out between the black and white swimmers. The crowd swelled to thousands, many of them arriving with bats, bricks, and other weapons. 200 to 400 police officers would descend on the scene, and the fairground was ultimately forced to close down. This unsettling incident is just one example of the violence against black people for simply attempting to swim. So today we're going to talk about the dark history of why black folks can't swim. And if you like stories like this, you can find more stories like this at onemichistory.com. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on my Buy Me Coffee Patreon page in the description below. But without further ado, let's get started. Prior to the transatlantic slave trade, swimming was an essential skill for survival and recreation in many African societies. Historical accounts reveal that swimming was a common activity across various African cultures. In the book, Enslaved Swimmers and Divers in the Atlantic World, Kevin Dawson highlights that Western Africans demonstrated exceptional swimming abilities. These skills were later exploited in the Americas, where enslaved Africans were often employed for tasks that demanded superior swimming and diving expertise, such as retrieving goods from shipwrecks or fishing. Historian Jeff Witzel further supports this by noting that during the 19th century, people of African ancestry were generally more proficient swimmers compared to their European counterparts. However, following the abolishment of slavery during the Reconstructive era and well into the 20th century, Jim Crow laws systematically excluded black people from various public amenities, including swimming facilities. Segregation policies across the United States often designated public pools and beaches as white only, causing significant decline in the swimming expertise and cultural affinity for swimming among the black community. During the early 20th century, the United States saw a significant rise in the construction of municipal pools, with approximately 2,000 new pools being constructed. This surge contributed greatly to the popularity of recreational swimming among the American public. However, this period of growth was marred with racial exclusion, as African Americans were systemically denied access to those public amenities, impeding the integration of swimming into black culture. In northern states, new pools were constructed in poor, immigrant, working-class, white neighborhoods, while black communities were largely ignored. Notably, the construction booms in the 1930s and the New Deal era initiatives like the Public Progress Administration and the Public Works Administration, the newly constructed pools remained predominantly in white neighborhoods. Despite these New Deal initiatives constructing over 1,000 pools from 1933 to 1943, black communities continue to be underserved and neglected. Originally, swimming pools in urban areas were segregated by gender, but did allow for some racial exclusivity. This changed with the construction of leisure pools in the early 20th century, and these were designated for mixed gender use. These new facilities came with exclusionary practices that specifically targeted African Americans. These leisure pools emerged as social hubs for the white community, and that racial stereotypes about African Americans being sexually aggressive and the source of dirt and disease reinforced these discriminatory practices. Public pools, which necessitated close proximity among users, became contentious battlegrounds for already entrenched prejudices. Many white Americans resorted to violent measures to enforce segregation, perceiving the intimate environment of swimming pools as an unacceptable place for racial integration. The enforcement of such racial exclusion was often carried out by either the police, city officials, or through the threat of violence. A stark example of this can be found in St. Louis in the early 20th century, where the population is almost 15% black. In 1913, the city inaugurated the Fairground Park Pool, which was an impressive recreational facility with a sandy beach, a diving board, and a limestone brick bathhouses. With a diameter of 440 feet, it could accommodate between 10 and 12,000 swimmers daily, earning it the reputation of the largest swimming pool in the nation, if not the world. Despite its grandeur, the Fairground Park Pool, like many pools at the time, was exclusively for white swimmers. As swimming gained popularity, discriminatory practices became more pronounced. The competitive era of swimming during the 1950s and 1960s saw attempts to desegregate municipal pools, and these efforts often resulted in white flight, where swimmers left public pools for private clubs or residential pools, and further restricting swimming opportunities in black communities. Swimming pools then became battlegrounds within cities like Chicago and Pittsburgh and St. Louis, witnessing violent confrontations between white mobs and black individuals attempting to enter public pools. A notable confrontation was in St. Augustine in 1964 when black protesters, led by Martin Luther King, jumped into an all-white motel pool. The manager reacted by pouring hydrochloric acid into the water. This event was photographed and broadcast all around the world and became an iconic moment during the civil rights movement and provoked a widespread backlash. In response, many local governments chose to close their public pools rather than integrate them. Some cities would also transfer ownership of pools to private entities, allowing them to legally enforce racial exclusion, effectively maintaining segregated swimming pools under the guise of privatization. Also, many municipalities would begin constructing municipal pools in predominantly black areas. However, these pools were often small and shallow, making them unsuitable for swimming lessons. This historical neglect contributed to swimming being viewed as a white sport associated with wealth and class. Consequently, this perception has continued to discourage participation among black families. Even today, the legacy of exclusion in swimming persists. In the latter part of the 20th century has led to the closure and neglect of many public pools, disproportionately affecting marginalized communities. Meanwhile, the rise of private swim clubs and urban pools, characterized by membership fees and geographic exclusivity, kept aquatic resources largely out of the reach of black families. Financial barriers and socioeconomic challenges, including lower disposable income and higher concentrations in urban areas, also hindered equitable access to swimming facilities. As municipal pools dwindled, access to swimming resources for poor and predominantly black communities in larger cities declined. This general lack of swimming facilities had tragic consequences. For instance, in 2010, the Kendrick Warner and 5 black teens drowned in Shreveport, Louisiana. A 2010 study for USA Swimming revealed that only 31% of black children and teenagers were skilled swimmers compared to 58% of their white counterparts. Another USA Swimming report would state that 64% of black children have little to no swimming ability. This is largely due to limited access to swimming facilities. This will lead to a huge disparity in drown rates between racial groups. Accidental drownings account for nearly 3,500 deaths yearly in the United States, averaging around 10 fatalities a day. The Centers for Disease Control has found that black children between the ages of 5 and 19 are 5 times more likely to drown in swimming pools than their white counterparts. This disturbing trend underscores the urgent need to address and mitigate barriers for swimming education and safety in minority communities. Additionally, in the United States, the responsibility of teaching children to swim typically falls on the parents. Unlike other countries like the UK, where it is a part of the national curriculum, while some parents do prioritize swimming lessons due to personal experiences and near-drowning incidents, the lack of nationwide requirement means that swim education is not uniformly emphasized. Also, the fear of drowning is a major deterrent, compounded by the fact that many parents don't know how to swim themselves. They are unlikely to teach their children to swim, and this perpetuates a cycle where non-swimming parents pass down their fears and inability to swim to their children. And lastly, hair concerns play a major role in the reluctance for some African Americans, especially black women, who worry about the effects of chlorinated water on their hair. Efforts to improve swimming education and dismantle misconception is ongoing, with new programs established in various communities to promote water safety and encourage swimming lessons. Learning to swim should be regarded as a fundamental life skill akin to driving. It should be considered a rite of passage for all children. Addressing disparities, swimming proficiency, requires targeted intervention to ensure more equitable access to resources and opportunities, especially in marginalized communities. Organizations like USA Swimming and YMCA have been addressing some of these disparities through various initiatives. USA Swimming, for instance, has the Make a Splash campaign, particularly focused on bridging the gap in swimming education among minority families. They advocate that all children learn to swim, and they emphasize the importance of swimming education, likening it to safety measures like seatbelts and bike helmets. Despite significant progress made by organizations like Swimming USA and the YMCA, overcoming these disparities remains challenging, particularly due to the lack of general swimming education and the inherent fear of water in some Black communities. By focusing on these initiatives, we can equip future generations with life-saving skills and open up opportunities that have historically been denied to Black communities. Thank you. This has been One of My Black History, and this has been Why Black Folks Can't Swim. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on my Buy Me Coffee Patreon page in the description below. I would like to thank all my financial contributors. Without you, none of this could be possible. And peace.